Now that you've coded a rough version of a home page, we need to add some more responsive code to create better page layout. There's a lot of ways to do this, but one of my favorite ways of doing it is by using a code generator. Code generators are really useful tools in web design. Contrary to what we've learned so far, when you're doing web design or modifying web design as a graphic designer in your career, you won't be building code from scratch. That's just not done anymore. We do that so you understand the code and can learn to write the code and read the code and modify it. But realistically, creating the page layout from scratch isn't done. Instead, we use something called frameworks. Frameworks are pre-generated pieces of code that help us to create page layout. One of my favorites, a very, very light grid system, a CSS grid, is from responsivegridsystem.com. If you go to responsivegridsystem.com, there's a really cool trick for doing page layout that I'm going to show you. What we're going to do is we're going to go to this website, and you can use any 12-column grid for this, but I'm just choosing to use this one because it's easy to do. We're going to go in here and we're going to generate a 12-column grid. There's a lot of reasons for 12-column grid. You should Google this and look it up. It's the basis for most page layout, very simply because 12 is divisible by the normal ratios that we would need in web design. When you think of columns in web design, things usually come, take this for example, this page layout. Things in web design usually come in 1, 2, 3, or 4 columns. Rarely do you see things over 4 columns in web design. This is a 3-column layout here. We've got a single column layout here. We have got a 3-column layout here, a 4-column layout here. So rarely do you see 5 columns or columns with odd numbers. We use a 12-column grid because all those numbers, 1, 2, 3, and 4 columns, and some of the specialized ones are all divisible. Okay, 12 is all divisible by those numbers. So if we generate a 12-column grid, we can create those grids very easily. Let's go ahead and do it. Let's click calculate here. So what happens? After we hit calculate, we're going to get 2 pieces of code. We only need one of these pieces of code. We only need this CSS that's here. So I'm going to take this CSS and I'm going to copy and paste it into an external style sheet. So first things first, let me go ahead and make an external style sheet here. So to make an external style sheet, we've seen this before, do File, New, and right out of the gate, File, Save As, and I'm going to save this as style.css. And go and get some external. I just Google external CSS, and you grab this piece of code, this link rel style sheet, href, whatever the name of the style sheet is. Remember, that code goes in the last thing in the head of your document. And you change the name and location of the href to the name of your document. Mine is named style.css, and so I've got this pointing to my style sheet. Now I'd like to test that, so I usually will just do some sort of very simple background color change. Like I'll take the body of the website and I'll do a background color and save it just to test to see. There we go. The background color of my website changed to red, so I know that my external style sheet is now linked up. So you've got your style.css saved in there. You've tied it in together with the link rel style sheet. That's all you have to do. Let me scrub this tester out of here real quick. All right, so now that we've got our external style sheet and our index.html is tied into that, we can go to this grid system page and copy the CSS. Now there are 2 chunks of CSS here. Make sure you copy both of them. I'll break down what they do in a second. Take those both and paste those into your external style sheet. Save, immediately save. There's 2 different things happening here. I'm going to break down really quickly what's happening. This chunk of CSS is for rows. When you do web design, I mentioned this earlier, but you want to design things in clear rows. As on our page, the navigation bar is a clear row. This header image is a clear row. The columns that I'm going to add below that will be another row. This code takes care of rows. And every piece of, and it's actually this div right here, which we're going to use in a second. So this sets up the rows. This is all of the options that you have, the width options of columns. It's actually pretty straightforward if you look at it. A 6 of 12 column is going to be a 50%. That's half and half. If you want 2 columns, we'll implement this code. 3 columns would be a 4 of 12. 4 columns would be a 3 of 12. So let's go ahead and do it. What we're going to do here, this is a good trick. I'm going to want a 2-column layout. I'm going to go to my Music Festival homepage. This is a single column. This is a single column, but I want 2 columns side by side down here. We did that last time with float, but float isn't the most effective method for this. It doesn't work so well for mobile things. So let's go ahead and go back to our grid generator, and I'm going to generate a 2-column grid. This will give us, if I hit calculate, this will give us the HTML that we need. This piece of HTML here, I'm going to copy and paste into my document and then modify. Copy. Go back to my index, and I'm going to paste this as the first thing right below my web banner. So where I want my columns to go, I'm going to go ahead and paste this. Okay, let's break this down what we're doing here. This chunk of code, this div class section group. Remember I mentioned last time that in CSS you can create classes and IDs to hold properties. They're like references to properties, like bookmarks essentially. There's a class being created for my 2 classes technically. Anytime you see in a class you've got a name, space, and then another class name, that's actually 2 different classes. Those are both being called section, and group are both being called dot section, and dot group are both being called from this CSS sheet. That establishes my row. The next piece of code, notice this is closed down on line 30. This row code, this div, surrounds the 2 columns that I'm going to be laying into this page. So I've got a row that surrounds it. Always create a row. Like I said earlier, we're going to create a div for the row, and then inside there I've got 2 columns. So this column, div class, col span one of two. The only thing you have to modify, all I've done is paste this code in here. I want a half and half. I want a 2-column layout. If I look at my style.css, the syntax that I want for this is 6 of 12. Fractional. 6 of 12 is 50-50. Okay, that's about a 50% margin here, or 50% column. If I change this to 6 of 12, since I've generated a 12-column grid, this will natively change these columns to half and half. Let's go ahead and save it and refresh and see if this worked. Check this out. I've got my web banner. Below that, I've got 2 columns right out of the gate. This is a very easy way to make column structure. Watch what I'm going to do next. Go back to your generator. Say I want a 3-column row. Calculate. Copy the code from the code generator. Go back to your document. I'm going to go below my row 2 here. I'm going to paste in this code. Now again, 1 of 3 won't work. This thing generates this copy on the fly. This is only generating enough code for a 3-column layout. But a 12-column layout, remember, is divisible by all of these numbers. Again, if you think logically with this, if you divide 12 by 3, you come up with 4. Okay, 12 columns, 12-column layout. If I choose a 4 of 12, that will be 3 columns, simple fractions here. Once those are in there, all I've done is copy and paste this code. I've got this original 12-column grid code in my CSS sheet. I've changed the 3-column code so that it's 4 of 12. I've saved this, and now look what we've got in our home page. Boom. I've got 3 columns. 2 columns above that, 3 columns below that. The beauty of this, though, this code, here's the real beauty of this, is that this code, whenever I go down to mobile size, these things natively stack. So you can test this in your own page whenever you get it set up. I accidentally closed my page. But these things are natively responsive. So I'm going to go ahead and open mine back up just so we can see what's going on here. So what you guys are going to do with yours, with your rough page layout, you can use this grid generator to generate page layout. Now, if I wanted these pictures back in these columns, the good thing is, all I've got to do is go back down to these columns I originally created, take this IMG SRC, copy it out here, and just paste it into my 2-column code up top. I've just pasted the IMG SRC in there. I'm going to paste it again so we can see that it's a 2-column layout. So I've just taken these 2 existing grid generator pieces and pasted IMG SRCs into those. Check it out. 2 columns. Now, these 2 columns, it only fills it up a certain percentage because I've got the width turned to 40%. Notice my picture, since I've done a responsive width on it, only fills up 40% of this div. If you want it to fill up the whole div, change it to 100%. If we change the images inside of our grid code to 100%, I've got these responsive grids from the grid generator. Section group is for the row. Div class 6 of 12 is a half column grid. IMG SRC, let's move that over a little bit, is inside there, inside this div. Second div here, close column. Change these both to 100%. Let's save it. There we go. Check it out. I've got 2 full columns below there. So this is how you start to do rough page layout. I can just use these really basic filler pictures and or text. I could, instead, if I wanted the stuff on the right to be text, I could use filler text. Or here's a cool thing you can do. Go to Lipsum generator. This is really useful for website stuff. You click it, Lipsum generator, lorem ipsum. Hopefully you guys are familiar with Lipsum text. It's the default filler text you use for graphic design and web design stuff. This is pretty cool. Lipsum generator, I can generate a certain amount of paragraphs of Lipsum text, filler text. If I click generate Lipsum, I can copy this, filler text, and this just gives me a good chunk of text. This is pretty traditionally used in web design stuff to fill a section. If I paste this in there, if I want a large chunk of text, I can save it now. And now I've got my picture on my left and my filler text on the right to show whoever was looking at this, a client or otherwise, that this is what our page layout is supposed to look like. Okay? You can kind of extrapolate this really quickly. If I wanted to go back into my code here, I can take these placeholder images that I've got, and I could paste these into my 3-column structure, change this to 100%. Copy that image, paste it in to all 3 of those divs, the 3-column code that I just set up earlier. And if you set up a 2-column structure and then a 3-column structure below that, you can start to see how clearly this web layout is starting to look. Now I've got this third holdover down here, which I should get rid of. But you get the idea. Once you've established rows of content, you can just copy and paste that content ad nauseum. I could perhaps do a 4-column row, and then a 1-column row, and then copy and paste those. If I ever need another 2-column row, I can go back into my code. I could grab this section group and the 6 of 12 all the way down, copy it, and then go right below the current content that I've got and paste it so that that double row of content is now below my 3rd row. See? So this is how you produce page layout, is you can just create sections of content that are filler and change those around however you wish based on this grid code. This is a really useful piece of code. So now that I've got this set up, I'm going to show you the last piece of this. If I've got a template, essentially what I've developed here is a template page. This template I can use to create my subpages, tickets, lineup, merge, contact, whatever your subpages are. This is really useful. All you got to do is go into either your text editor, Sublime Text here, or just the folder structure. This is pretty slick. What we can do, I've got my index file here, my HTML or my CSS file here. Take your index file and copy it. Just do edit copy. And then paste it. Edit paste or control V or command V. And remember, I created these names earlier in a nav bar up top. We created simple nav bars. We'll get into more advanced nav bars as we go. But how to create these sub pages, all I've got to do is coordinate my names. Tickets.html. If I change the name of this copy that I've made to tickets.html, I'm just going to do that for all of them. Tickets, lineup, merch, and contact. Theoretically, if I've done this correctly, now if I go back into Sublime Text and I look at my very simple nav bar that I've created, index.html, tickets.html, lineup.html, merch.html, and contact.html, I have just made those files by copying and pasting the original HTML file that I had. Okay, the plus of this now, I can then go into this tickets file here, open this inside my text editor. I'm now inside tickets.html and just rewire the title tag. tickets. All I've done is name this tickets and save it. Okay, I'm going to open the next file. Lineup. Open it in Sublime Text. Change your title tag. Save. Go back, merch. Let's just do this for all of them. Contact. Now, because I have got in each one of these pages, because it's the exact same code, so when I copy and paste this file in my folder structure down here, it copies and pastes everything. So all of my code is exactly the same now. All of these nav bars that I've rigged up in the top here are on every page. I have now got a working website. These links should link up to every page that I've got on my website. I've created these and just changed the content. You could also go through, the idea here is you also go through and retune content. I would go through on my contact page and I would change my layout. You know, implement a 2-column layout, 3-column layout, whatever you've got on your wireframes. But let's go ahead and test these to make sure they work. I'm going to open up my index page. Okay, how do we know this is working? Because of the title up top. It says Music Festival homepage. When I click tickets, look, the title tab changes up top, tickets. Lineup goes to the lineup page. Merch page. Contact page goes. We have created a functional linked 5-page website. That's how you do it. So using some tricks with this, like this grid generator and copying and pasting out files, you can create a rough page layout, a rough coded prototype very quickly and easily in HTML.